I'd like to call the Macomb City Council to order, please. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If the clerk would call the roll, please.
Mike Wayland.
Here.
John Vajezi.
Here.
Annette Carper.
Here.
Tom Cook.
Present.
Gail Carper.
Here.
Tammy Lee Brown Edwards.
Here.
Dennis Moon.
Here.
7 present.
We have a quorum. Thank you. Council, before you is a consent agenda, and a motion is in order.
Move to adopt as published.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda as published. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Wayland.
Aye.
Vajezi.
Aye.
A. Carper.
Aye.
Cook. G. Carper.
Aye.
Brown Edwards.
Aye.
Moon.
Aye.
All ayes.
Motion carried. Thank you. Under the public comment section of tonight's agenda, citizens wishing to address the City Council will be limited to 3 minutes and are asked to be brief and concise in making their remarks. And I believe we have a couple of written comments. Is that correct,
Yes.
Madam Clerk?
This is from Samuel G. Richardson, President of Social Justice Coalition. In response to Gail Carper's action taken to promote community equity, racial justice, June 2019 to 2020 from the October 19, 2020 City Council meeting, I would just like to say that everything listed on this document you produced is your job and the City Council's job to do. I don't know why you're expecting a pat on the back from the minimal effort 16.5 list of actions that you're attempting to use as a get out of jail free card for your shiftless and enthusiastic attempts at helping black folks and other minorities in Macomb at your own comfort and leisure. We have repeatedly, time and time again, asked and implored the City Council to agree to adding a discussion on the agenda or have a town hall to discuss the increase in hate incidents in Macomb, the continued intimidation of protesters and voters by dangerous trucks decked out in hate symbols, which causes a large number of us to feel unsafe living, working, studying, or even passing through Macomb. Instead of letting these pleas fall on deaf ears, I hope tonight one of you on this council will submit a request during your reports for an agenda item or town hall covering these issues. Furthermore, I would like to add that I have personally stopped attending protests because of the significant threat of violence against protesters by members of the community and by dangerous vehicles attempting to hit us by either driving too close or intimidating us by blowing out exhaust fumes from their vehicles. Councilwoman Brown Edwards has repeatedly voiced her concerns for the safety of black folks and protesters, yet the rest of the City Council, which is white, has acknowledged her concerns publicly, nor did they appear to care in any way. With that being said, please remember to vote tomorrow, Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020, if you haven't already. Local politicians can have a great impact on our lives, so please keep these things in mind when you go to the polls. Silence is complicity, and it's time we have public officials that will stand up for our black community when they are suffering. Respectfully. Okay, Scott. I'll use my phone. Okay, this one is from Verna Parkins, Becky Danner, and Regina Matthews. First Vice President, Verna Parkins, First Vice President, Becky Danner, Second Vice President, Regina Matthews, Racial Justice Coalition Leadership Team. 3 weeks ago, Democratic Women of McDonough County President Heather McMeekin submitted a complaint to Chief Barker about a Macomb police detective's online behavior, making derogatory and incendiary comments about Black Lives Matter protesters and his tactical concealed carry business Facebook wall. Last week was the meeting for this complaint. We were all sent an email with the link to the audio file and transcript, or you were all sent. We hope to hear in your reports and acknowledgement you received it. The complaint process DWMC President Heather McMeekin was subjected to was inappropriate, unprofessional, and unacceptable. For more than a year, we've been asking the mayor and the city council to address the multiple concerns we have brought to you about the process. She was bringing serious concerns from our organization to your departmental leadership's attention on our behalf. That she received such a maltreatment says much about the city's police and city hall leadership. You all owe her and us an apology. Photo ops and signing statements for MPD and city leadership trying to portray a police culture of professionalism and respect are still just performative feel-good actions without substance. No community member can safely make a complaint about the police to our police. Allowing a department to police itself is failure of oversight. A police leadership permitted to treat community members bringing complaints to them with such outdated, traumatizing, and inappropriate tactics sends a chilling message. The Macomb Police Department must be investigated, Chief Barker must go, and the department must be demilitarized and restructured. The transparent complaint system outside of Macomb Police leadership must be established and be independent of the police and city leadership disruption. Trauma-informed interview practices should always be employed. Psychologically traumatizing interview techniques should have been banned from this process decades ago. Despite all of your assurances, this process is no better for our community. This is only allowed by your complicity. We hope you remember this as you repeatedly ignore our leaders while demanding our respect for your part in upholding this unacceptable status quo. Repeated attempts to get you, our elected representatives, to hold your mayor accountable and to fix these issues have yielded no progress. The list of job duties claimed as racial justice hasn't addressed this problem. Produce actual progress on fixing these basic tools and structures of good government. Hold a public town hall on the record for us to discuss our police department. Sincerely.
That's
it
for
all I have.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak to the council under the public comment section of tonight's agenda? Ms. McMeekin.
Heather McMeekin, Macomb. On behalf of the Democratic women of McDonough County, we'd like to update the community as to the status of the complaint we submitted to the Macomb Police Department. Our meeting was last week, and the transcript and recording are up on our website. The complaint process, procedure, and tactics are shockingly outdated, given that many have asked for transparency and fixes for years. The Racial Justice Coalition has explicitly requested fixes to this system now for over a year, yet the process has still not been updated nor even apparently evaluated to ensure adequate protections for complainants. There appears to be no guiding structure to ensure a safe, trauma-informed, transparent, shared interest, respectful discussion format. Furthermore, it permits use of tactics known to be psychologically traumatizing against complainants. We cannot recommend any community members attempt to use this process in its current form. Protections and trauma-informed measures must be put in place to ensure people will be treated with fairness and respect. Those with complaints about Macomb police officers can take them directly to the Illinois State Police, the Department of Justice, the Department of Human Rights, the Illinois Attorney General's office, or you can contact your city alderperson. You can also state your issues directly on the public record at a city council meeting so your concerns are at least read into the public record, whether or not they are addressed. We have an election tomorrow, which likely won't be decided for several weeks to come. We call for a peaceful election and outcome. We'd like to remind everyone that voter harassment and intimidation is against the law, and those engaging in it will be held accountable. We hope all voters will treat election officials and each other with patience, respect, and attend to distancing and safety. Any problems or concerns can be taken to your party's poll watchers, election judges, or the county clerk. Stay in line even after the polls close, and your vote will be counted. Now that COVID positivity is tracking upwards, we urge those in our community not doing their part to wear their masks, avoid public spaces, and safely distance. It's time for all to step up and help our beleaguered public health experts save our hospital from fiscal calamity and save our health professionals, including those at our hardworking health department, from more trauma. We are all at risk of COVID harming our health and destroying our local economy with more spreading. Blaming politicians for the selfishness and ignorance of individuals and businesses not doing their part only prolongs this misery for everybody. Take personal responsibility, do your part to stop the spread, and we'll all benefit.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the council in the public comment section of tonight's agenda? Okay, if you would approach, and your name for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Lauren Switzer. I run Rocky's Bar and Grill in Macomb, Illinois at 1420 West Jackson Street. I'm here regarding the announcement yesterday about another shutdown for restaurants for indoor dining. This is not a feasible request. The first time it happened was the longest 3 months that we have ever experienced. This is a wonderful, strong community, and we have done our part and went by the regulations and stood strong, but I am telling you that another shutdown will be extremely detrimental and many will not survive. It will not only affect restaurants, but other small businesses as well. This pandemic is serious and we take it seriously. We go by the guidelines. But we did not open a restaurant to serve you in styrofoam and to have you take it home. We appreciate all the support that's been given, but we are a restaurant with open doors to serve you inside. I employ, if I'm including myself, I employ 29 people. Rocky's Bar and Grill has been around for 21 years in August. It was the regulator that my father also owned before then for 17 years. That it is my home away from home. I worked there growing up and I took over 2.5 years ago, and I will tell you this is the hardest thing I've ever had to do, as I'm sure this pandemic has been the hardest thing for a lot of people. We need to come together and support our local businesses, or we will not have the community and the population and the continued thriving that we do and are trying for now. It's just, it's a scary time, and I just ask that you take into consideration myself and all the other wonderful restaurant owners in this community. It's November. You can't seat outdoors in November. It's supposed to be nice this week, but whatever. There's gonna be snow on the ground soon, and students from Western will be going home soon for break, and it's just, think of a lot of my staff call me mom. I'm not a mom. I'm a to-be mom of
Lauren.
3 stepkids. Yes.
I'm sorry, the clerk's telling me it's been 3 minutes.
Okay.
So if
I'll
you could wrap it up. Thank you.
Anyways, we're a community, we're a family, and a lot of people feel that way, and that's who I think of, is my staff, and I value my staff very much, and my family and my customers, and we will continue to do our best to provide a safe and good environment. So thank you very much for listening. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Lauren. Anyone else wish to speak under the public comment section of tonight's agenda? Right up here, Tammy, and if you could, for the record, your name.
Hello, my name is Tammy Yates. I'm the owner of Chubby's on the 2 West Side Square here in Macomb. And I'm just, I'm here for the public part of just, there's got to be something that's done for us because you guys are closing us down again. Just listening to Lauren, it's exactly how we all feel. We're a very tight-knit community. We're following all the rules. We spend the money on all the masks, the chemicals. We've done everything that has been asked of us from the start of this pandemic. It's been a very long and tiresome year. There's a lot of us that are not going to make it through this, and if you shut us down again, we won't be able to reopen. The sales just don't cut it. We didn't do this for carryout. We're not a quick service restaurant. We're a full service restaurant. We employ 24 people. Today I have to go home and decide out of those 24 people, which one of them I'm going to lay off for the duration of this with Christmas right around the corner. That is very hard to do. It was hard to do the first time. And I still haven't been able to make that decision. I have stewed about it all day. There has to be something. There are other communities in the state of Illinois that are violating the closure. We want to follow by the rules. But there's got to be some help for us, because if not, you're going to start losing a lot of us. And we put a lot of work into providing a good product and a good service for this community. We do fundraising for the community. We give back in so many ways. But now is the time for you guys to help us, because we need it. If not, we're not going to be able to come back. Many of you have been in our businesses. You see what we're doing. We sanitize all the tables, the chairs. The hardest part about this is to going home and telling your employees that they're not going to have a job, and Christmas is coming, and their unemployment, there's no extended benefits for unemployment for them right now. These are our family. These are our kids. They're my kids. My responsibility to take care of them. When I employed them and brought them on, it was my responsibility to make sure that they were financially sound, and I'm taking that away from them because I can't even do that for myself right now with this pandemic. So I know there are some towns that they're just saying we're not going to enforce this, and I don't know if that's even feasible, but something has to be done because we can't survive another shutdown like this. You've seen the sales tax numbers come in, they're down. That's because we're all struggling. We're hanging on by a thread. And I just implore on all of you to help us, because we do a tremendous service for our community, all of us in our own special way. And so we need you guys to stand up for us now.
Okay.
We need the support. We need to be able to stay open.
Okay.
That's all I have to say.
All right. Thank you, Tammy. Anyone else under the public comment section of tonight's agenda? Emily, if you would, for the record, right up there, please. Your name, please.
My name is Emily Gamage, and I'm the owner of the Old Dairy in Macomb. I just want to say first and foremost that thank you, Macomb, for the support for the last 7 months that we have struggled and survived through this pandemic. And the fear of the winter approaching already has left us sleepless so many nights. This is the American dream and nobody's dreaming. I'm not sure how we are supposed to survive another shutdown. The capacity in our restaurant is high enough for the space that we have, but at any given lunch at 12:15, we have maybe 3 tables. 12 people inside. On a normal business day, it would be 75, easily in a given half an hour. With minimum wage continuously increasing again come January, we also have to regulate our staff, who we need to have on hand, who we don't. It's November, it's Christmas time. I have 2 boys, 4 and 7 years old, and I don't want to disappoint them this Christmas. So not only is it me, it's also my entire staff. I don't want to tell people that they need to stay home because we don't have enough work for them. We will 100% support curbside and support outside dining as much as we possibly can, but for the people that choose to sit inside, I really hope that we can make the choice that they can still sit inside. We continue to wear our masks, we sanitize constantly. We've been through this since day one. We've not served the community. I just am hoping for the support from everybody right now, no matter what decision we do decide to do on Wednesday, because it's not easy. It might not be the choice that we want to have, but we don't have a choice this moment. We're all running on empty. That's all I have.
Thank you, Emily. Anyone else under public comment? Alice, can you check to make sure no one's out there? Is it? Okay. All right, hearing no other public comment, we'll move on to unfinished business. Item number 1, consideration of an ordinance to create a Class A liquor license for Neiman Foods Incorporated doing business as Apollo Coin Laundry number 687. This will be second reading.
Thank you. This ordinance, if adopted, would create a Class A liquor license for Neiman Foods doing business as Apollo Coin Laundry at 503 West Jackson Street in Macomb, Illinois. We have posted the appropriate signage. We have sent out the appropriate notices. We've conducted the public hearing as required on October 19th of 2020. We have done the required background checks pursuant to our municipal code. We have not received any written protests. Let me back up. We have received one written email that we have responded to. And so if granted, it would create the Class A liquor license with certain conditions, namely those that have been recommended by the fire chief pursuant to fire code. Those have all been reviewed with the applicant, and there's no objection, but those requirements would be incorporated into the license. If they were not complied with upon construction, the license could be revoked.
Thank you. That'll stand as second reading. We need to entertain a motion to approve the license.
Make a motion to create a Class A liquor license for Neiman Food doing business as Apollo Coin Laundry.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to approve the license, create the ordinance. Any discussion? Alderman Carper?
Ms. Gelf, I just want to reiterate for public knowledge that this is a Class A liquor license, and it doesn't require any balancing of revenue, whether food or laundry or anything else. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, there were some comments to that, and I think people were mixing up some of the requirements between Class R and Class A, and I want to make sure we get on the record that Class A does not require any balancing.
And that's correct. And I would add, because it was raised in the email comment, that also applies to gaming revenue. There's no restriction on that balancing either.
Okay, so it doesn't, there's no state requirement, there's no city requirement at all.
That's correct.
Great, thanks so much.
Any other discussion? I would just have one question for Mr. Riney, and this has been discussed with staff. Mr. Riney, there's kind of a looming issue with your other license in the community regarding a barrier on the south side of the property that's been kind of a back and forth between what we tried to do, what we were unsuccessful doing, and at the end of the day, it's your intention to place a fence along the south side of the exposure at the Pets Plus and current laundromat and gaming facility you have on the corner of Dudley and Jackson, and actually more on, importantly, the Dudley and Washington, and you've given us an assurance that that'll be done and completed within the next 90 days. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
It has been ordered. We have paid the contractor for the work and for the fence. COVID has slowed down delivery of materials, but they assure us that at the latest, by the beginning of December, they will receive the materials and come and place the fence.
And there was some anticipation that could be done within 48 hours, weather permitting, once they got started?
They believe December 5th is the drop-dead delivery date. Assuming no weather interruptions, they would be here within 48 hours to place.
Super. All righty. Thank you very much, sir, and I appreciate your help in getting that resolved as well. Hearing no other discussion, roll call, please.
Vajezzi,
Aye.
A. Carper,
Aye.
Cook. No. G. Carper,
Aye.
Brown Edwards,
Nay.
Moon,
Aye.
Wayland. Aye. 5-2.
Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 2, consideration of an ordinance annexing certain territory located in the southeast part of what would be the city of Macomb, or future annexation, known as the Julie Davis Trust. This will be second reading.
Thank you. There was a written petition signed by the owner of record of the land, as well as 51% of the electors asking or seeking annexation into the city of Macomb. The territory is currently not within the city limits, but is contiguous to the city. We have complied with all requirements of Section 7-8-1 of the Illinois Municipal Code. We've notified all fire protection district, public library district, township, and other entities required to have notice. And if granted, the city council would make a finding and determination that it is in the best interest of the city that the proposed territory be annexed into the city. And that property is located in a part of the southwest quarter of Section 5, Township 5, Range 2, west of the 4th Principal Meridian, located at 13325 North 1150th Road, and it contains approximately 6.83 acres.
Thank you. That'll stand as second reading. Motions in order.
So move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt the ordinance annexing the property. Any discussion? Are there improvements on this lot?
There's a residence.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Anything else? Hearing none, roll call, please.
A. Carper.
Aye.
Cook. G. Carper.
Aye.
Brown Edwards.
Aye.
Moon.
Aye.
Wayland.
Aye.
Vajezzi.
Aye.
All ayes.
Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 3, consideration of resolution extending the mayoral emergency proclamation declaring a civil emergency due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the original order being issued April 16th, 2020. Do you want to read the resolution of the record, please?
Thank you. As everyone is aware, March 9th, 2020, Governor Pritzker initially issued the first gubernatorial disaster proclamation that has been extended multiple times, the most recent being October 16th of 2020. COVID continues to be a severe acute respiratory illness that can spread. Continue to have multiple cases daily. Numbers worldwide are increasing. This resolution would extend the current emergency proclamation that was issued in April of 2020 that permits the city to continue to operate, allows the mayor to do mayoral orders as necessary in the best interest of the community in accordance with the existing executive orders and resolutions from the state of Illinois. And if adopted, the resolution would extend that proclamation to January 4th, 2021, at which time it would expire or could be extended by council.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Would entertain a motion to adopt.
Move to adopt.
Second.
So moved and seconded to adopt. Any discussion? Alderman Vajezzi.
I just want to make a quick comment. I appreciate the fact that the patrons and the owners of the restaurants have come in this evening. And I do understand that this is something that's coming from the governor that could potentially affect us on Wednesday. But I do hope that as we move forward within that, that we do look out for the best interest of the people of Macomb and the restaurants in Macomb. This is a very tough decision as we move forward and a tough time that we're having. But I understand, what the restaurants want, what we're trying to do as a council to make sure that everybody is safe. So I just want everybody to understand that, we are doing our best, and I hope the mayor makes the best decisions to move forward.
Alderman Carper.
Just want to make sure that it was me. I really feel for the people who talked to us tonight. I've been in that business. It's hard enough in normal times. But we have to balance the community good here. And I'm sorry we have to balance that against individual businesses. But since this is a highly transmissible disease, and it's through people talking to each other that it's transmitted, I don't really see any option but going along with those mitigation orders that the governor has imposed by executive order. I do not believe that we can say to people, well, just decide on your own what measures you want to follow to keep the community safe. And I might be speaking from my age because I'm in that category where it's worse. And a lot of you in this room are in that same category. I don't know any other answer than to limit and even put restrictions on places where people gather, because you can argue about numbers, but that's the way this deadly disease is spread, is with people getting together. and we have Thanksgiving coming up, and I know a lot of people are going to ignore the dangers at Thanksgiving. And so I think that the city government is doing what only what we can do is to say, in the public places that we have control of, we have to limit gatherings. And I'm sorry to do it, but I completely agree with you, John, on what you just said. I don't see any other option.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Moon.
Just for clarification, this proclamation has nothing to do with the people that spoke earlier about the restaurants, correct?
If I could address that, maybe in a broad sense. It does, but it doesn't. I do not have the authority to circumvent an executive order by the governor of this state. As many of you well know, is that our power to override anything at the state level, we can only make it more restrictive. We're not allowed to make things less restrictive. I am extremely sensitive to the folks that spoke here this evening. I know all of them personally as well as many of you do, and I know that they are committed, they're passionate about what they bring to this community through their businesses. And I can't tell you how personally I am moved by them being here this evening. And I truly appreciate everything that they have done, and by no means would say that they have done anything to bring this action upon themselves from the governor. Having said that, we would encourage them to take every precaution they can and do what is right. And to that extent, Dennis Snow, we are limited by what we can do with this order.
Well, I just thank you for that explanation. I would withdraw my motion if the responsibility on the restrictions on these establishments fell on us, which I was pretty sure I interpreted it right. It doesn't. We can make it stricter, but we can't be more lenient.
That's correct.
Mike, the way I look at this resolution, the proclamation, is that it enables us to apply and possibly receive federal COVID funds and that type of thing. And that, to me, that's the necessity in passing this proclamation.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Alderman Brown Edwards, I'm sorry.
Madam Attorney, can you speak to the, I believe it's like a 65-day timeline? Why was the timeline decided that way?
The January 4th.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the initial extension, I'm going from memory, I believe was from April to July 1st, I believe. The second extension, I think we extended for 72 days. And I think there was some discussion as to whether it be closer to 90 or 60, and we landed somewhere in that range. This time, this is about 64 days. But council can shorten it, can it lengthen it, there's no restrictions. This is different than the governor's disaster proclamation where he's limited to 30 days. Because council is adopting this, you can extend it or shorten it to whatever length you deem appropriate.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Cook,
No.
G. Carper,
Aye.
Brown Edwards,
Aye.
Moon,
Aye.
Wayland,
Aye.
Vajezi,
Aye.
A. Carper,
Aye.
6-1.
Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 4, consideration to authorize the purchase of software for the Community Development Office, Public Works Department, and Business Office from B&S Software. There's a memorandum from the city administrator in there, as well as a recommendation from the General Government Committee. Mr. Coker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll kind of summarize this as much as I can. It's a long memo. It's been a long process. So we put out a request for qualifications recently for software for the city. I want to thank our selection committee, I'll call them. So that's Carrie Rhodes, Alice Ortman, John Bannon, and Lisa Scalf. We spent quite a bit of time going through this and watching some pretty long demonstrations. So last Thursday, we had a demonstration for the General Government Committee. It took about 2 hours where we had BS&A come in and present. And what we're doing is proposing to replace a software that was, we believe, first purchased in 1987, if not before that. That's as far back as our records go, honestly. And last updated in 2003. So main areas that we'll be replacing are our financial system. So that's what we do, our general ledger, all of our invoicing from, everything our financials are in, our utility billing system, both run on an AS400 system. And then we will be proposing to purchase software for public works and community development, which we really don't even have software for those two entities currently. As I mentioned, the financial system, utility billing system run on an AS400 server that we have here in City Hall that come next year will be out of upgrade capability, and we're going to have to replace it regardless. So that's probably a $50,000 to $75,000 purchase we'd have to do regardless of what we decide tonight. So as I mentioned, this will be for Public Works, Community Development, the business office to handle all those areas. And it will have a customer portal that will allow our citizens to interact with filing complaints, concerns, and get into their utility billing information. So originally we advertised this October 2nd. We received 7 proposals. We shortlisted that to 3. And if you go to the last page of my memo, the 3 that we shortlisted to were BS&A, CUSI, and Tyler. So our selection committee sat through about 7 or 8 hours of demonstration from each of those companies, which kind of gives you an idea of how involved this is just to see their demonstrations. Through that, we picked BS&A. We actually picked them before we opened the cost proposals. Once we opened the cost proposals, then we saw that BS&A was the most inexpensive of the softwares. So if you go to my spreadsheet, the implementation is going to cost around $214,000. Travel is estimated about $14,000. So with this one, we'll be hosting this in our building here. So we will have to purchase a server. Worked with Timbuk Tech to get a cost for that. And then I've put in around $20,000 for miscellaneous hardware. We need to add some scanners in different departments. So we're moving towards a paperless government is our plan. So we get an invoice in from a vendor. We'll scan it in, and then it's all online from that point. Can be reviewed by the department head. It can be approved by the audit committee, all online. Doesn't have to pull the paper out of the filing cabinet. So the total for one-time cost is around $313,000. We have budgeted $200,000 in our business office budget for this purchase and $20,000 in our IT fund. But through the purchase of the software, we're going to ask for reimbursement through the Local Cures Act. And the reason we're going to be able to justify that is for a few reasons. The software will allow more remote access by our citizens, so they won't have to come to City Hall to pay a bill. They can do it online. We have some limited capability with that now, but this will be expanded. They'll also be able to access more features for the city. So I'm gonna ask for $146,000 at a minimum. So the total I'm expecting from the city budget is around $167,000. There will be a yearly ongoing service fee of $21,335 for the BS&A software, which we currently pay $21,200 for our financial and utility billing. So it's very close to what we're actually paying now for our software. So we'd ask for approval to proceed with this. This is a long, tedious process. We're expecting 7 to 9 months for implementation. So that gives you an idea how involved this is. All of our financials will be moved over to this. There'll be a lot of training, our utility billing system. But I will say the staff in the business office, public works, community development is very supportive of this. They know they'll have a lot of effort for the next year, but they're very supportive and would really like this to move forward. Because they've seen the demonstration of the new software, and they know how labor intensive. I think you've seen the demonstration last Thursday, and a lot of you've seen the processes we deal with now. So, welcome any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Scott? Alderman Carper.
The demonstration was really impressive. I came last week and saw it, and this just came up. So if you can't guess at this, just say, I can't
Okay.
guess. But I was reading the auditor's report, and they once again recommended that we improve our inventory controls and stuff. Do you think this software
Yes.
could address that? I know we talked
Yes.
about work orders and
Yes.
things last week.
So inventory, there's, I'll say, two types of inventory. There's equipment inventory, which is trucks, snow plows, equipment. Then there's consumables inventory. Both of those will be in the system. So I don't know how far we'll go in public works with it, but yes, we'll have the capability to do both of those. And our plan is to do both, yes.
The only other thing I wanted to say is it sounds like you did a great job involving a lot of city staff, because they all seem to be really excited about it, and
Absolutely.
it's hard to get people excited about having to learn something this complicated. So great
Well,
job for your
thank you.
team.
Thank you. This will be a lot of change, a lot of change. But I think that speaks to how much they understand what we're doing is from 1987.
Yeah.
And I ask anyone to pull out their cell phone or their car or whatever from 1987, or their computer, and you don't have it. So it's time to do this. It really is.
Thank you. Alderman Vajezi.
I just wanted to say real quick to thank everybody. This has been a long and tedious process for you and the staff putting this together, but thank you to all your department heads. I was also in the presentation, and this will move us light years back into the future where we need to be. It'll make it much easier. Yes, there'll be a learning process and a learning curve, but it'll make it easier for our residents, make it much easier for staff, and it'll much, much better system. So thank you for putting this together.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Brown Edwards.
Yes, I was also at the presentation. I'm very pleased. In the year I've been here, I've been hoping that we could move a little more paperlessly and make things more accessible for our community. I have gone to the water department myself and asked for billing, and it's just like trying to figure out long arithmetic mixed with some physics and geometry to figure out what date ends when with something else. And it's just, I have some degrees, so I can't imagine if somebody else have a hard time understanding that, let alone the work that they have to do to even print it out and explain it to everyone and, create a map and a graph and handwrite certain things out. And I know that's going to make this so much easier for them. And I know it's going to take a long time for things to be implemented and a lot of training and a lot of hiccups along the way, but they seem to be ready for this challenge, and I'm so excited about that. I asked a lot of questions at that presentation, and one thing that I am excited about is that the gentleman who gave the presentation said that they would be able to provide us marketing material to at least maybe do a video to show our users how to get into the portal. So I think that's going to be absolutely helpful. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Alderman Wayland.
I just want to make a statement that while everyone was looking at all the new program, I was doing the audit by hand. And it's going to be a great thing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Alderman Cook.
Well, I think this will be a giant step into the modern world of information and the input and output of that information with a minimum amount of work. And I think it's a very positive step.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Alderman Moon.
I'll just say a couple words. If I understood the presentation last Thursday, we're still using DOS. So if anybody even know what that is, that should be self-explanatory.
Couple of things. Alderman Moon's being a little humble. I know that in my 13 years here in City Hall, he has been an advocate for pushing us this direction since day one. So Thanks, Dennis, for hanging out and being with us through the pain of it all. Scott, you may have touched on it, but just briefly, is there a possibility for us to explain how we are likely to get some reimbursement from the Cures Act and why that would be qualifying?
Sure. So, and this kind of pushed we were talking about this software obviously already. We in the budget process last year, we put some dollars in for it. So we were moving this direction, but once we started to see probably 2 months ago that some discussion through DCO, which is the state agency that oversees the Cures Act for us, they said if it's something that will aid our citizens to not have to come to City Hall, to not gather here to pay a bill, to access some service, then we could ask for reimbursement for that. So that's the whole crux of what we're going to ask for. And so I've put in there $146,000, which BSNA has asked for a payment up front when we sign the contract, and then there's payments due farther along. But I'm going to ask them to invoice us the whole thing, and then we'll ask for reimbursement for the whole thing. So there's a possibility we'll get $313,000 out of the reimbursement. We have a large sum that we've been struggling from the Cures Act to justify reimbursement for. So I'm going to ask for all of it, truthfully. So, but I'm going to say I feel definitely the things that we get invoiced this calendar year, already in the schedule, that's what we're going to ask for sure.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
I need a motion and a second
Oh,
first.
sorry, I thought we did that already. Apologize. Would entertain a motion to approve the purchase.
Make a motion to authorize the purchase of the software.
Second.
Any discussion? One other thing, we have part of this budget, is that correct?
Yes, yes we do.
Okay, very good. Alderman Brown Edwards.
I'm sorry, Mr. Coker, could you kind of speak to a little bit on how that would help community development? We did speak about how it would help Public Works.
Sure. So yeah, there's so much in the software. So community development will have two main modules, and that's code enforcement. So when there's a complaint about property, whatever it is, it's all GIS based. So it gets tied to that property, and then they can automate a letter out of that to send to that property owner, then set it up on the calendar so that then they get a reminder to call them again in 30 days or check with them in 30 days. So then we now have we keep records in paper files. They call it the street file. So you go in there, every address we have a manila folder for. So now that'll all be online in the system, all GIS based. Graphical information system, so you can look at the map, click on a property, and then be able to pull up that file and see what's tied to that property. So that's the code enforcement. It also have a building inspection module. So when someone asks for a building permit, they can do that online through the system, not have to come here to City Hall. So a lot of our contractors are very savvy in technology. They can do all that online, another reason not to come here. And it gets tied to that address. So now we have a record of every building permit request for that address. And then we can set up when our building inspector goes in the calendar to inspect it. And then we will input our building codes that we use. He'll have a tablet with, if it's a concrete foundation, it'll tell you, is the concrete deep enough? Whatever the checklist from our building codes that we use will be right in the system. So there's a lot that I could really get into.
And if in City Hall our processes change, or we need to add information to the new system, are they able to support that?
Yes, absolutely. So in the demonstration we had Thursday, we had each of our departments talk about our current process. John got up and pulled out the triplicate form that our city clerk remembers in 1985. Working with that, so we have the same form, triplicate form, for building permits from the 80s. So it'll all be online, it'll all be able to be changed by that department. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, now I guess we're ready for roll call. Thank you.
G. Carper,
Aye.
Brown Edwards,
Unfortunately, I'm sad that I can only vote once, so yes. I would say yes, 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 like I'm excited about this.
Moon,
Aye.
Wayland,
Aye.
Vajezzi,
Aye.
A. Carper,
Aye.
Cook,
Aye.
all ayes.
Motion carried. Thank you. There is no other unfinished business. Under new business, item number 1, a presentation from Wormer, Rogers, Doran, and Razan, LLC, on the audit for the city of Macomb's fiscal year ending April 30th, 2020. We have Mr. Thomas Lancaster from the firm here to give us an overview.
Thank you. Thanks for having me come out. I'll do my best to briefly cover 140 pages, so bear with me. I'll start by giving an overview of sort of the different reports and filing timelines with the audit that were associated with the audit. So the city's AFR for the fiscal year ended April 30th of 20 was submitted timely. That was due October 27th. The IDOI reports, those are reports that are due to the Department of Insurance for the police and fire pensions. Those were also submitted timely. Those were due by the end of October. And then one thing this year that was not required, occasionally, so when a government expends over $750,000 of federal awards, they're subject to what's called the Single Audit Act, which are just some additional auditing requirements that have to be worked into the audit. That was not required this year because the city did not meet that threshold. I'll first begin with I'm sorry, was there a question? And feel free, so I will move kind of quickly to keep it moving, but if you do have questions, just feel free to interrupt me. I'll begin with the management letter. That's what looks like this, only yours is colored. Beginning on page 2, we highlight the positive management comments for the practices in the business office. So we note, so an audit has a lot of moving parts. It requires a lot of cooperation from the business office staff. And we wouldn't be able to complete it without their cooperation, so a lot of effort on their end. A few things to highlight. The city's business office staff responded timely to our audit requests for documents and inquiries, helped us complete our work and meet deadlines. All city funds were reconciled at year end. Monthly bank reconciliations of cash and investment accounts were prepared on a timely basis. The city properly allocated property taxes to each of the funds. And business office employees continued to show improved technical skills as they have in prior years. Moving to opportunities for improvement, so these are sort of best practice suggestions. The comment that was mentioned earlier with utility billing procedures. So we noted that employees receive payments for water bills, have access to billing rates, writing off accounts receivable, and general ledger. We recommend that the city move to implement procedures to segregate some of these duties so that there isn't so much overlap. It's important to note, so we did test utility billing and receipts during the 2020 audit. So the sample that we tested, we did not find any errors or any indications of fraud. This is just a recommendation for a best practice. And the city commented, management commented that the city is currently working on developing procedures to mitigate these issues. We noted expenditures in excess of budget. In 7 of the city's funds, we noted expenditures exceeding budgeted amounts. The largest overage was $120,000 for the sales tax and infrastructure account in the general fund. Most of that was attributed to bond issue costs associated with the refunding in 2020. It's important to note that the city budgets for over 30 funds annually. So of those, there were 7. And then the comment on inventory. So the city's inventory locations don't have a consistent tracking system in place for inventory that was removed by employees for jobs. I promise that was not a plant from the city administrator. We did plan to include that. It just happened that you all were working on it. So the city is in the process of making improvements to the inventory procedures. If there aren't any questions on the management letter, I'll move on to the audit report. Okay, that's the large. You'll have a bound copy, but that's the larger one.
Oh, before you move on, I just want to emphasize that in your management report, you say all good things and no bad things. Would that be correct?
Yes,
Thank you.
that's a good way to put it. Yeah. I probably should have led with that, right?
Well, I was going to lead you to that anyway.
Okay,
so.
thanks. So on page 5, that's the management discussion and analysis. So some financial highlights from 2020. The city's total combined net position was over $59 million at 4/30/2020. So that's the amount that the assets exceed the liabilities for the year. And that's a snapshot in time as of your fiscal year end. That's an increase of over $544,000 from 2019. Total cost of the city's programs was $23.6 million, and the general corporate account reported a year-end cash balance of $5.1 million, which amounts to over 7 months of general operating account expenditures. So that's a good financial position. Pages 6 to 8 provide the condensed statements of net position and activities. So that would be the statement of net position, again, is a snapshot in time as of your fiscal year end. It's the amount by which your assets exceed your liabilities at that time. So a larger number is always better. And then the statement of activities is just the change in year to year of the statement in position. So this year's governmental activities left the city with $37 million in net position, which is an increase of approximately $681,000 from last year. The business type activities ended with $22.5 million in net position, which is a decrease of about $137,000 from last year. And the business type activities, that would include water, sewer, and garbage. They call them business type because you charge a fee for the service. Page 9, individual fund information. General fund had revenues down by about $886,000, or about 6.9% from last year, due mostly to property taxes and intergovernmental revenues. Expenditures also decreased by about $1.4 million. IMRF fund, total revenues for 2020 were over $247,000. Expenditures were just under $400,000. The Section 5311 Transportation Grant Fund, that has revenue from the 5311 Operating Assistance Program and the Downstate Operating Assistance Program. Total revenue for that was over $3.8 million for the year. The Water Fund, operating revenues decreased by approximately $259,000. Operating expenses during that same period increased by over $77,000. For the Sewer Fund, operating revenues also decreased, down approximately $115,000 from last year, while operating expenses for the Sewer Fund increased over $127,000 for fiscal year 20. For the Garbage Fund, operating revenues also decreased, down over $19,000 from last year, while operating expenses increased only marginally. Some budget to actual analysis, revenues in the general fund were $605,414, or 5% higher than budgeted, due mainly to higher than expected sales tax collections. And the expenditures in the general fund were $847, or 3.9% lower than budgeted. And that's mainly due to lower than expected capital outlay expenditures for the year. Beginning on page 10, we have an overview of the capital asset activity for the year. And this is where you usually see the city's largest investment in assets. So at the end of fiscal year 20, the city had combined total capital assets, which is net of accumulated depreciation, of over $74 million. And that's invested in a broad range of assets, including asset types including land, buildings, vehicles and equipment, city facilities, and sewer and water lines. And during the year, the city added over $3.7 million of new capital assets. Most of that consisted of new buses that were placed in service for the year. On page 10, there's also an overview of the long-term debt activity for the year. So the city's long-term debt includes equipment loans, notes and bonds payable, compensated absences, and net pension liability, Total of all of those was around 35 million. And during 2020, the city issued Series 2020 general obligation bonds in the amount of $4,010,000 to refund the 2020 general obligation bonds. The city has a statutory debt limit of over 16 million. It's 16,014,030. The total debt outstanding applicable to that limit is only 512,495, which is about 3.2% of the statutory debt limit. That reflects the city's conservative debt issuance philosophy. In the most recent bond rating, the city was rated AA3, which is considered high quality and subject to very low credit risk. Beginning on pages 12 to 13, we have what's called the basic financial statements. I'll give a brief overview of sort of what those are, and again, stop me if I'm going too quickly, or rush me along if I'm going too slowly too. Yes?
I just want to say again, on page 10, that's all really good news there, isn't it?
It's all good.
Thank
yes.
you. I'm going to probably do that again.
That's fine. So pages 12 to 13 are the statement of net position. We mentioned that earlier. That's just a snapshot in time. It shows the amount by which the assets exceed the liabilities. And again, to put it in your terms, since that's a big number, it's a good number. It's
Thank
good
you.
information. Pages 14 to 15, that's a statement of activities that shows the current year increase in the net position. There was an increase of 544,562, which again is good. Page 16 is the governmental funds balance sheet, which shows governmental funds ended 2020 with total fund balances of 11.8 million. So in all, the total of all the governmental funds, all of their assets exceeded their liabilities by 11.8 million, which is very good. And then page 18 shows the increase in the year in the governmental funds. So for 2020, the overall fund balances in the governmental funds increased by almost $1.5 million. Pages 20 and 21 show the proprietary fund balance statement of net position. Had an ending net position of 22.5 million, which we mentioned earlier, and this breaks it out between the different funds, so you can see water, sewer, and garbage, how much they contributed to the fund balance for the proprietary funds. And then page 22 shows the current year decrease, so shows what last year's proprietary fund balances were, the decrease or increase for the individual water, sewer, and garbage funds, and then you can see that arrives at a total decrease in the proprietary fund balances of around $137,000 for the year, which still ended with very healthy fund balances. Page 23 is the statement of cash flows for the proprietary funds. So to put it in the simplest terms possible, the statement of cash flows, everything we've been discussing so far is sort of generally accepted accounting principles. So, it doesn't always reflect inflow or outflow of cash. It will over time, but revenue has to be earned, recorded when it's earned, expenses booked when they're accrued, that sort of thing. What the statement of cash flows does is just show the actual change in cash for the year for the funds. So and this is just for the proprietary funds, not the governmental. So for the proprietary funds, they showed a net decrease in cash for the year of around $922,000. Still ended with a very strong position, and most of that was money that was transferred over to the governmental funds, so moved to other funds. Pages 25 and 26 provide statements of net position and changes in net position for the fiduciary funds. That includes the police and fire pensions. So you can see police and fire pensions decreased by 1.8 million for the year, still ended with strong fund balances. And then beginning on page 27 and going to page 26 are the notes to the financial statements. So the notes to the financial statements provide a lot of required disclosures that are required to have financial statements prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, which is what you have and what is required. Unless you have specific questions on the notes, I wasn't going to cover anything here because aside from the required disclosures, they really just provide more detail behind the information reported in the basic financial statements. After that, that's followed by some required supplementary information and other information. So really, all of the remaining information and schedules within the audit report itself just sort of show additional disclosures for police and fire pension. They show some required budget to actual information. So if you wanted to drill down on some of the specific funds and see where there were or weren't overages, or where, you know, the budget was better the other way. So in other words, you budgeted for more expenditures than you actually had, or you had revenue in excess of budget. You could see that in those remaining schedules if you go through that. And then it ends with, on page 139, there's a report on compliance with requirements for the TIF districts, which you'll see notes that the city complied with the necessary requirements for the year. And that brings me to the end of the audit report. If there are any specific questions.
Anything for Mr. Lancaster? Ms. Carper?
Are you going to go through this communications with those charged with governance report too?
I could. I wasn't going to.
Well, I just want to bring out that you say that there's no matters that have come to your attention that would say we're doing something bad.
Correct.
And you say that our estimates are reasonable and that you found no significant difficulties in dealing with anybody, and you keep going on and say good things throughout that too.
Yes, and that's also where you could find, attached to that report, if you wanted to see adjustments that were posted as part of the audit, that's attached to. And this, so you bring up the communication with those charged with governance. It is required communications, so if we did run into difficulties, if there was anything that prevented us from doing our audit work, we would have to disclose it here. I'm happy to report there is nothing negative to include, so also
Great.
very good information.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Lancaster? Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. Appreciate you making the trip here this evening, and you had several new staff members with you this year. Appreciated getting an opportunity to meet with them and work very professionally with them, and we thank city staff, mainly Carrie Rhodes and the business office and her staff for allowing us to have such a report that was so positive, so thank you.
Thank you, and thank you on behalf of my staff too. You know, we sort of meet after all the audits, almost do a debriefing, if you will. They all appreciated that the city and city staff made an extra effort to make everyone feel safe. You know, considering what's going on with the pandemic, we do have people in our office with whether they're taking medication or they have pre-existing conditions that put them in a compromised position. We meet before any field visit to see if anyone's uncomfortable with going. We meet afterward to kind of talk about it. Everyone felt like your staff put the extra effort into making them feel safe, and they appreciate that too. And we do too. You know, we don't want anyone being afraid to come to work.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
All right, thank you, sir.
All right,
Thank you.
I would make one comment. Usually I'm the half-full person in the crowd. Thank you, Alderman Carper, for being that.
I'm usually the other way, so.
I understand, so I'm going to take a little bit of that take. This audit was through April 30th of this year, so the majority of the issues regarding the pandemic and our revenues or anything that would come from the census in a negative way is not reflected here, even though we have a very good standing, and I'm appreciative to staff and the council's support and getting us into that position both this year and historically over the last several years. But I do need to disclose to the public that we will be very diligent in being conservative going forward so that we are having as minimal impact on those reserves as possible while still being cognizant of reduced revenues and providing the service that folks expect from us. So, thank you. We will receive and file the audit. Thanks very much.
We need to make a motion.
A
to
motion for
accept
that? Need a motion to receive and file the audit.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to receive and file the audit. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Brown Edwards.
Aye.
Moon.
Aye.
Wayland.
Aye.
Vajezzi,
Aye.
A. Carper,
Aye.
Cook,
Aye.
G. Carper.
Aye.
All ayes.
Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 2, consideration to approve the quote from Eric Thomas, doing business as Electric Oak, for professional services to redesign the City of Macomb's webpage. There's a memorandum in your packet from the city administrator and a copy of the quote. Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Another item that I recently became aware of during all this pandemic is that another effort to allow better access by our citizens is to have a redesigned webpage. I feel that we have a lot of information on our webpage. It's just difficult to find things, and we can add more information. So to that end, the best path forward that I see, and I've talked with several staff about this, is to redesign our webpage, have a fresh new look, simplify the way you navigate through the site. So we have a current relationship with Electric Oak, who's been starting to do some minor improvements on our webpage. I think maybe you've seen some of them start to clean up things a little bit. So I asked them for a quote to redesign our webpage. And so I've been working with City Clerk Melanie Falk and Downtown Development Director Kristen Terry to rethink how our webpage looks. We went to several cities around, well, all across the United States, and found bits and pieces from the webpage that we like the most. You know, real simple things that we can give to Eric, and he talks about those in here on the second page of the quote. Carbondale's webpage, Davenport, Rochelle, City of DeKalb, and I'm not saying the whole webpage is what we want. There's just bits and pieces, so while we're redoing this, we can pick things out. So he gave us a proposal back, which is included in your packet, and there's a couple of different costs here. So the $12,625 is to do the webpage, and honestly, that's just billable hours. It takes a lot of time to move things around and redo it and listen to what we want and incorporate that. The second item there, provider database. So we have a community resource coordinator in our office, Jorian Tucker, that's been working on electronic database of social services in the community. And he has that in Excel, everything listed. But we want to incorporate that into a database on our webpage that people can search for social services. And this, if you recall, there's a McDonough County Social Services Guide. It's a printed PDF. You can search in a PDF, but you can't really, it's not an interactive search. So that would incorporate, we've already been talking about this, so it's another way to have online access to folks that need services. And then the last thing is helping us promote our new webpage. So once again, as this is an effort to provide better access to our citizens and the public during, and not come to City Hall. I mean, it's not that we don't want people to come to City Hall, but we want to give them better access, online access. So we would ask for reimbursement from the Cures Act for this entire expense as we move forward. So I'd entertain any questions.
Any questions for Scott? Alderman Vajezzi.
I'm sorry, I might have missed, but how long do you think it would take from start to finish to redesign the website?
My goal is by the end of the calendar year.
End of the calendar.
And Eric says that he sees that as doable.
Okay, thank you.
The majority of it. We'll still be tweaking it.
Alderman Moon.
Again, this appears to be a single source.
This is professional
reason?
services, so technically we don't have to go out. We already have a relationship with them. We could quote it. I think it would be a very difficult process to quote this type of work. Because I don't even know how you would even quote that, so.
Well, I don't mean to be a smart, but same way you'd approached him on getting a price from him.
Sure.
Anyone else? Alderman Carper.
I noticed that the proposal says that they will ensure compliance with ADA standards.
Correct.
But I don't see anything about compliance with Freedom of Information Act requirements. I mean, there's some state requirements, and I think Lisa can help me out here a little bit too, that I've noticed we aren't really doing very well on in our webpage that are, that are required under not just ADA, but
Sure.
some freedom of information stuff.
I
How do we
guess-
do that?
Absolutely, we can incorporate that. I believe that as a web page developer, like Eric is, he's much more familiar with ADA requirements.
Okay.
He's probably not as familiar with FOIA stuff, so it would be our place to tell him what we need to have on there. So he's already made an improvement. If you've noticed on the left side of our homepage, or any of our pages, there's a button you can change the text size, and can't think of the contrast, yes, thank you. So he's already started to make some improvements, so, yes.
Okay. There are just some
Yes,
other.
and those things we would
Yeah.
work to
So
incorporate.
then
Yes.
Lisa would have to be involved in that?
Yes, yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Alderman Brown Edwards.
Yes, thank you so much for giving us this presentation. As you know, I've emailed you several times, as well as the city clerk, about the accessibility of the website. And so I'm very thankful that these changes will be made. I do have one question. I'm looking at the site mapping. Could those things be changed or added? I guess my question is that, will all changes have to be outsourced, or could they be made in-house?
You're talking about the diagram that he has? So we talked through this, and this actually is a map of our current site, to tell you the truth. So if you look at the tabs across the top, they are about Macomb, government. So he needed something to put in the proposal, but I've already told him we're going to change that quite a bit.
Excellent.
Yeah, so
You don't have to say
that's not-
anything
that
else,
is
as long as
not
you're going
what
to change
we-
it. Okay, great,
No,
thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Alderman Carper.
I kind of stand with Alderman Moon, concerned that it's our only quote that we've received, though I know that Administrator Coker does a good job. And then I have a question in general. I get confused as to, sometimes it'll be first action is in order when it's just presented for the first time, and other times it takes a couple readings before we're asked to make an order, to make a motion. Is that because this is for professional services that this is presented to us this evening and we're asked for a vote this evening? What's the difference in those situations?
The ones that require two readings are ordinances. This is not an ordinance. This is a purchase.
Okay, all right, I get confused on those.
No,
Thank you.
no problem. Glad you asked. Anyone else? Okay. We'd entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve the quote from Eric Thomas, DBA Electrical Professional Services to redesign the City of Macomb webpage.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the quote. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Moon,
No.
Wayland,
Aye.
Bajesi,
Aye.
A. Carper,
No,
Cook,
Aye.
G. Carper,
Aye.
Brown Edwards,
Aye.
5-2.
Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 3, consideration to authorize the purchase of Chamber of Commerce gift certificates for city employees for Christmas in the amount of $30. There's a memorandum in your packet. There is no memorandum in your packet. I apologize. This is the annual purchase for the city. We have a total of 104 employees that would benefit from this action, and that would be a total of $3,120, and it is a budgeted item.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to authorize the purchase. Any discussion? Alderman Brown Edwards.
Could you explain which employees would benefit from this?
Sure. Got
All full-time, part-time?
all
All
employees.
Thank
Not-
you.
Not elected officials, just employees.
I understand that. Thank you,
Okay.
Your
Not
Honor.
employees.
Yep. Anyone else? All right, hearing no further discussion, roll call, please.
Wayland,
Aye.
Bajesi,
Aye.
A. Carper,
aye.
Cook,
Aye.
G. Carper,
Aye.
Brown Edwards,
Aye.
Moon,
Aye.
all ayes.
Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 4, Consideration of an ordinance to authorize the rezoning of 10905 East 1200th Street in the which is within the 1.5 mile zoning buffer of the city of Macomb, McDonough County, Illinois, from R1 single family residential to AG agricultural. This is be first reading.
Thank you. This ordinance would authorize the change in zoning from R1 to Ag for a property located at 10905 East 1200th Street, which is outside of the city limits but within the 1.5 mile zoning buffer of the city. The property is located in the north 10 acres of the south 17 acres of the north 40 acres of the west 1/2 of the northwest quarter of Section 7, Township 5 North, Range 2 west of the fourth principal meridian here in Macomb, Illinois. We have complied with all requirements for notification of public hearings, served written notices, published the notice in the McDonough County Voice, posted a sign at the property, and the Planning Commission did in fact conduct a public hearing on October 14th, 2020, and they have recommended that the council approve the application 7-0. The applicant, I will say, is Dave Wilson, but the application was in fact signed by the current owner of the property, so he is aware that this would be a permanent change in zoning. So if granted, it would change the zoning of the property from R1, one family residential, to AG agricultural.
Okay, that'll stand as first reading. We'll place that on for additional discussion at next Monday's Committee of the Whole meeting. Item number 5, consideration of an ordinance authorizing the sale of certain personal property, being equipment and vehicles owned by the city of Macomb. This will be first reading.
Thank you. The ordinance does authorize the sale of certain personal property pursuant to the Illinois Municipal Code. Does authorize, or the city council authorizes, is permitted to authorize the sale by ordinance in any manner that they deem appropriate. So the ordinance would permit the sale of the property listed in the attached Exhibit A.
Thank you. That'll stand as first reading. And as you see, there are a few items listed there. Where there would be some anticipation there would be additional items being added over the course of the next couple of weeks, but we will have that on for further discussion next Monday at the Committee of the Whole. There is no other new business to see. Oh, sorry, Alderman Moon.
I'm not sure where to interject this, so if it's not appropriate, I'm sure the clerk won't have a problem telling me
Okay.
it's not right. In the discussion about creating the Class A license, how does the orders from the governor affect an operation similar to the laundromats with the Class A licenses able to serve alcohol, and which enables them to have the gambling machines?
It's a good question. I had the conversation with the governor's staff late this afternoon, and their information shared with me is that the gaming component of that business will be allowed to proceed, but they'll be limited in their operation to 11 p.m. and with no service of alcohol or food at the location.
So they're going to allow them to still have the gambling machines, but no alcohol?
That's correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else under new business? Hearing none, we'll have committee reports. Any committee reports this evening? Alderman Annette Carper.
Thank you. I'd just like to say that the Looking for Lincoln Committee met this past week via Zoom. I just wanted to let them know that the Looking for Lincoln is now online with a website. There are 7 sites that are identified. You can go on there. You can click where one of the places are that President Lincoln stood in our community, and President Lincoln comes on and gives a little speech about what he did that day. So it's really, really cool. Chris Sutton has done a phenomenal job with this website system, and so I just like to know, like our community to know that that's up and running, and it looks great.
Thank you. Any other committee reports? Hearing none. Aldermanic reports. Alderman Moon.
No report.
Alderman Brown Edwards.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I appreciate the local business owners, restaurant owners coming today. I know there was many downstairs in the overflow, because I saw them in the parking lot and I spoke to them. I encourage our citizens to support these businesses by picking up, taking out, and buying gift cards. I understand that as a city, we can't do anything to supersede the governor's order, so I'm hoping that citizens will support these businesses. I also want to thank Mr. John Bannon and the Complete Count Census Committee for organizing and executing successful events, brainstorming on how to engage citizens, and have the citizens complete their census either at these events or remind them and encourage them to do it at home. I wanted to thank the citizens that come every week for either writing or speaking to City Council. They either admonish us to do better, to make Macomb better for all people, inform us on issues or incidents of importance. They give us letters that encourage us, support us, criticize us, and educate us. In October, we heard from several citizens, and some of them provided information about the importance of pronouns, spoke to the land acknowledgement of Native and Indigenous people who lived in this land before us, the perspectives of who Abraham Lincoln is to other citizens in this town, educated us about the historic significance and importance of Macomb residents, Reverend Dr. C.T. Vivian and Ruth Tunnicliffe, along with many other informational items that they've provided to us. And every week, I take down detailed notes on each speaker and each writer when those things are submitted during our public comment. I'm very appreciative of those speakers and writers because I'm taking advantage of everything they said and making notes for that. Lastly, I want to say that tomorrow's election day, and it's also an Illinois state holiday. So if you have not voted early, please do at your local polling place. I want people to wear a mask and wash your hands, and all lives matter. I'm sorry, all Black lives matter, and thank you, Your Honor. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Carper.
Couple of things. I didn't say it when we did the consent agenda, but I wanted to thank Chief Barker for including the listing of the training that his officers do. We've been asking for that for a while, and he has included it on his monthly report. I've had the opportunity to be out on Grant Street in early mornings, and the Safe Route to Schools project looks great. And I wanted to give a shout out to the people who stand there and act as crossing guards. The physical stuff is very effective, but they still need to have people out there to help some of the little kids. And finally, this is a message to the people in my ward, in the 5th Ward. It's time for one of you to step up and do your civic duty, because I've decided not to run for office again, and the deadline for filing petitions is coming up pretty soon. So if you're in the 5th District or the 5th Ward, please consider doing your civic duty and running for this particular office. It's a 4-year term, and you can contact Melanie Falk for details on how to do that. That's it.
Thank you. Alderman Cook.
I want to encourage people who haven't voted to vote, because you're going to have to live with the results of this vote over the next several years, 4 years for the national government, and other time limits for other things. So get out there and give us your word.
Thank you. Alderman Carper.
Thank you. I sit here today, I'm like many of us in the community, that my heart is heavy, listening to the restaurant owners that come to us today. I was a person that, my husband's bar and grill, we raised a family on that. And so it breaks my heart to see the businesses in the place where they are. I wish that we could allow them the decision. I wish that we could trust consumers to be smart about it, but I understand there are certainly limits with that. But by saying that, I encourage everyone to please frequent your places. I've committed myself to 2 nights a week. I will order out from a restaurant here in town and make sure I give them my patronage. I know that's not easy for everybody to do, but if you can, please do that. I've heard from folks at the pub family that they're, the people that work, like that, those 24 people that work at Chubby's or work at Rocky's, they rely on tips. Waitresses and bartenders don't make very much an hour. been there, done that, and you rely very, very much on tips. The public doesn't often realize that it's still nice to tip, even if you pick up a to-go order. That waiter and that waitress is coming in and they're making $3 an hour or something very small like that. So please remember them with an extra 5 or a 10 or even a 20 if you can, because they're relying on that to make their rent and to make their utilities. I feel like my community has changed so much. It's just, and I guess the pandemic is getting to me like it's getting to so many others. I serve here as a public servant. I ran for office. I have a family. I have a big job, and I come to this meeting, and I'm beat up at every meeting that I come to for the last year and a half. I'm only human like everybody else, and it's very difficult, to be honest. Alderman Gail Carper, Alderman Tammy Lee Brown Edwards, and myself are the only ones who have spoken out about the racial things that are happening in our community, and I wish others on this council and in the city would do the same to speak out to support us. It's very hard to be here. As evidenced, Alderman Gail Carper presented a list of how many good actions the city council has done. You notated 87 times that the mayor has been to meetings, but then tonight, again, we get admonished because we didn't do it right. And that's just, I'm beyond frustrated with that, and I'm asking these people that come to us to please be kind to us and remember that we are people just like you are, and we're working. I know that Black Lives Matter. I also know that white silence is not violence, and I'm tired of hearing that. This whole gallery was filled earlier this evening, majority white people, and there's not a white person in this gallery who is violent. I do not appreciate the statement that white silence is violence. I don't appreciate that we're complicit because we are quiet. We all fight racism in our own way. Maybe we're shy, and maybe the best way we do that is saying hello to our neighbor. And I'll end with that. I just want to also say that in relation to building local community, our Rialto Cinema is, they're having a really, really hard time, of course, so they have some deals right now going on for some VIP. If you can, go pick some up, even if you don't go to the movie. Maybe they could be a Christmas gift. And finally, thank you to the city employees. I wish we could give you 300 instead of 30 because you deserve it. Actually, I have to speak up very highly for the Public Works Department. Those guys and gals are fantastic. They do so much work for our city. And soon we're going to see them out at 2 o'clock in the morning laying salt for us so we can get to work early, on time the next day. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Vajezi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 3 quick comments. The first one is congratulations to Macomb High School cross-country team. They had sectionals this past weekend. The girls took 12th place with Olivia Bishop taking 21st. And then the boys team took 6th place with Ben LaPrade taking 7th and Stan McKelkian taking 10th place. So congratulations. If we had state this year, the boys would definitely be going on to state. My first career was 21 years in the restaurant business. And so when I listened to Lauren and Emily and Tammy talk about this, it is very heartbreaking to know what's happening to them because, as Alderman Carper said earlier, waiters work on tips. Please, please, please support your restaurants, support your local businesses. Go out a couple times a week if you have the funds to do that. Remember to leave a tip. This is their livelihood. The last thing I want to see is a business close in Macomb. It is up to us to try to help out wherever we can. So if you have an option to do that, you have the funds to do that, please go out and support any and all local businesses in our area. Last one is please vote tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Whalen.
Great reports, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's all the aldermen, isn't it? Madam Clerk?
I don't have anything.
Mr. Coker? Ms. Scalf?
Very briefly, I would encourage all the businesses that showed up, and even those that didn't, to consider applying for the business interruption grant program. There's still plenty of money out there. I looked at a report of people that got it the first round. I think it's a 36-page report, all $10,000 to $20,000. So apply, you never know.
Thank you. You're leading right into where I was headed. Thanks, Lisa. So a very sobering start to our meeting this evening with those business owners coming forward and explaining their plight. And to say that we're empathetic would be an understatement. We want to do whatever we can. As Alderman Vajezi said, the last thing we want to see is businesses cease to exist here. So I doubled down on what the other alderman had commented on. We need to support these restaurants and the associated bars and entertainment locations the best we can. This order that will take effect by the governor starts Wednesday and will be up for a 14-day review period. So they'll be looking for case positivity ratings to drop below 8%, not only to drop below, but to get to 6.5, and then these restrictions would be lifted. If they're not, if there isn't a change in a positive way in the positivity after 14 days, it'll be reviewed after an additional 14 days with the possibility of additional mitigations being placed. So there is a review process here. We'd ask folks to please keep that in mind as they review their plans as business owners. To put this in perspective, the latest information from the McDonough County Health Department today indicates that a total of 838 cases have been confirmed in the county since the beginning of this pandemic. They're currently monitoring 140 active cases, and the data would suggest that at one time there was a concern regarding the WIU role and the case count. That currently is at 322. The city is at 315, so there no longer is a disparity between those cases on campus versus the general community, and they're showing an increase in cases outside of Macomb and the other smaller communities in the county, as well as unincorporated areas. And speaking to our partners at MDH late this afternoon, they currently have 15 total inpatients. Of those, 5 are COVID positive, and some of them are on life support, and they have a total of 8 of those 15 patients are in isolation, which they're managing, but it creates a significant workload for staff, as you might indicate or be aware of. And they were, at the hour when we were talking, they had 16 patients in ER. They have 10 beds. They have 16 patients in ER. A high percentage of them were there complaining of COVID-related symptoms. So just a bit of perspective of where we're at. And I don't say that to alarm anyone, but just to inform folks as to the gravity of the issue here. And as Ms. Scalf said, we would continue to advocate for our local businesses that are impacted in a negative way to please get a hold of folks at MADCO, and I thank Ms. Kim Pierce from MADCO for being here with us this evening, and also at the Chamber, as well as the Office of Community Development, to help shepherd you through those programs and help with those applications so that you have the greatest chance of being selected for those. And we will continue to advocate with Senators Durbin and Senators Duckworth and Representative LaHood at the federal level for additional support from the federal government in the form of stimulus, both for the general public and assistance to small business, as well as the Pritzker administration in Springfield. That's a component that seems to be lacking some congruency at both the federal and state level, and we'll continue to ask our representatives at that level to be diligent in doing what they can to support local businesses. With that, I'd like to call an executive session to consider information relative to appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of an employee of the public body or legal counsel for the public body pursuant to Section 2C1 of the Open Meetings Act, and collective bargaining matters between the public body and its employees or representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees pursuant to Section 2C2 of the Open Meetings Act.
Make a motion to go to executive session.
It's been moved and seconded to go into executive session. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Vajezzi,
Aye.
A. Carper,
Aye.
Cook, G. Carper,
Aye.
Brown Edwards,
Aye.
Moon,
Aye.
Wayland,
Aye.
all ayes.
Motion carried. For the media, we'll take just a few minutes, and we'll go into executive session.